the streaming model doesn't depend. It doesn't depend on mass consumption per se. It depends on subscription, just regularly subscribing. That's it. And then if they can display to their shareholders, right, that there's regular subscriptions, then the share value of that streaming service stays robust, and some people make money every day, as opposed to the industry, right, which is storytellers and creatives making the money.
So basically, streaming is like the soul piece of distribution. Oh wait,
You said it.
Greetings and welcome to another exciting installment of the Film Biz Show, the only show where we delve into the industry professionals' minds to get an insight of the current landscape of the film and television business, both in South Africa and internationally.
Please subscribe, like, comment, and turn on the notification button so you are aware of our future episodes that you will love so much.
Now, if you're in this industry and you have not heard of this man, then I'm afraid that you have been living under a rock. Literally. His journey began after obtaining his bachelor's and honors degrees in both National Film Institute of Nigeria and AFDA in South Africa, Johannesburg. He has fulfilled his role as a director, producer, a writer for shows such as Shaka Ilembe, Ashes of a Red Cow, Sierra's Gold, House of Zwide, Zone 14, Isibaya, Jacob's Cross, Society, Skwizas, Room 9, My Perfect Family, Tshisa III, Mfolozi Street, Jewel, and so much more. His documentary, Burning Man, won him 3 Golden Horns. He's also one of the directors for this new Shomax Show Red Ink. Very exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, he's done it all. Please, let's welcome the legendary director, producer, writer, and mentor, Adza Ugah. Well done, brother. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
That doesn't sound like me though, but
It's always scary to see the work that you've done.
and you think you've just started.
Yeah. You've still got some years ahead of you too.
I hope so.
Yeah. So now, Adza, you are a household name who's done a whole catalogue of films, that are widely recognized. But my interest is, where did it all start for you? How did this bug, how did you get bitten by this bug?
Okay. Let me start by saying I think I was lucky. Lucky to have been chosen by the storytelling bug, as opposed to the one who chased the storytelling bug. And it began, many years ago when I was still a child, the first of many siblings, 5 to be specific. My dad worked for the Nigerian version of the SABC, and he was an engineer. And he used to come back home with a lot of broken VCR machines that needed to be fixed. And in those VCR machines would be some odd tape of an old TV movie, from Hollywood or wherever. And we'd always get a glimpse, of those films. And he would, once the machine was fixed, we'd watch it all from beginning to end. And it was fascinating, And bearing in mind, that time in Nigeria, right, TV sucked. There really wasn't much on TV. TV began at 4 p.m. and ended at 10 p.m. True. That was TV. There was no private TV stations. There was nothing entertaining. Everything was government-based, and it was mostly talk shows to basically improve the quality of people as opposed to entertaining them. So TV was really, really not a viable thing for anybody. It was just used for government propaganda. So those films were a fabulous breakaway, if you know what I mean. They were refreshing, they opened up my eyes to a new world. You saw characters and you saw heroes whom you wanted to emulate and basically kind of relate with. And that was so fascinating. On the one hand, my mother was a social worker, and she was just this fabulous storyteller. She could just keep you enraptured with stories for days, And growing up in Nigeria at that time, electricity was very scarce. People think load shedding is like a new thing. It's been there, and we've been having it as the old advert would say. You know?
We've been having it.
We've been having it. Spend hours with no electricity, sometimes days and weeks. And so, of course, there was always this thing of gathering around and people talking. And Mom was just very good at just telling our stories. And I suppose that was kind of how the culture just started, especially for me, my family. And I just took to storytelling like a fish takes to water, you know, to the point that, you know, when I watch a film, you know, I go to school the next day and I'm the first person to gather my friends around to tell them the story about the film. To the point that, you know, our class teacher, when she had to mark, like, what do you call it, papers or something like that, and she needed the class to be distracted by something, she would call me up to stand in front of the class and tell them about a film that I saw. And 90% of the time I made those stories up. I just combined 4 or 5 different films. You know, those who saw the films were, well, that's a lie, that didn't happen. But, you know, people went, oh, but God. I mean, they were very, very enraptured. It worked. And I wanted to just, you know, take it to the next level. You know, I wanted to be able to make people feel the way I felt when I watched the film. I think that was for me the biggest thing. You know, just to be able to share the emotion, the experience of, oh, what a journey, what I mean, you should have seen what this guy could do. He could fly, he could punch through walls, you know, he could run so fast, you know, whatever. You know, because, you know, we're dealing with things that were very, very restrictive and suppressive. So any kind of escapism was welcome. And I wanted to share that escapism with as many as I could, you know. And so, yeah. But at that time in Nigeria, there was no such thing as a film school. And given the economic situation, you know, given leaving the country to study was out of the question, you know, like Chivagumbi would say, in this economy. Yeah, it was tough. So I tried to become an engineer like my dad because that way a future was guaranteed in terms of getting work and employment. But it was frustrating. As in, I found myself constantly being distracted by the screen. Like that one now, I can't help but just wonder what's going on. You know, so I'm that kind of person. I'll find myself spending money on books that had to do with film instead of my engineering books. Yeah, so I just discovered that, okay, you know what, I'm wasting my time here. I'm just not using my resources well. And I decided to make the switch. But then there was nowhere to switch to. There was no film school in Nigeria. Fortunately for me, you know, somewhere along the late 90s, a film school was opened by the Nigerian Film Corporation. And I did not waste time. I just rushed there. I said, you know what, sign me up, I don't care. And that's how the journey started. Next thing, graduating, telling 1 or 2 odd films in Nigeria, and then coming to SA to carry on studying. Studied in SA, and found myself on film sets after studying, and they say the rest is history, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's an interesting journey. Yeah. And I'm sure you witnessed the rise of the Nollywood film industry, you know?
Yeah, I did, which I didn't want to be part of, you know, because I felt like that was not what I wanted to be kind of attached to. I didn't want to be a Nollywood filmmaker because as much as I saw them and I knew what they were trying to do, you know, there was something about the way they were being done that didn't appeal to me. And they had fabulous stories, but the execution was so bad. And I thought, no, man. Interestingly enough, you know, while I was in film school in Nigeria, right, we had watched the Shaka Zulu series that was made here in 1987. And when I saw that, I was like, that's South Africa. And in fact, that was what inspired me to come to SA to study. When I saw that Shaka Zulu series, I was like, if the South Africans can make movies like this, that's where I should be studying to know how to make movies, especially from an African context. So it's weirdly enough, I found myself now also working on a new version of Shaka Zulu.
Yes.
You know, so things have come full circle, right? Yeah.
Full circle.
So yeah, because Nollywood just didn't cut it for me, you know. But that's the thing of the past now because Nollywood has come of age. Yeah. They've caught up, you know, they've improved their quality of presentation, their cinematography, many things have improved.
Definitely.
You know, storytelling, yeah, it's all there. So yeah, so the journey is still ongoing.
Yeah, definitely. And you see, I mean, the South African and Nigerian markets are like 2 different markets, you know.
Yeah.
But I am aware in the grapevine that some of these streamers have been interested in kind of carving out a narrative that can unite these different markets from different territories in the continent.
You know the funny thing about when Europeans say, "Oh, I'm coming to Africa." I mean, you've heard that before. When Americans say, "Oh, I'm coming to Africa," and And it feels like they're wrong for saying that, because Africa is not a country. Africa is a continent with so many countries. I want to beg to differ and think they're right, that Africa is actually a country, with different tribes. It's just that, politics and colonialism,
Yes,
basically broke us up into small segments and basically made us, what do you call it? We're now, they divided us, to conquer us so that they can take from us, that sort of thing. But we are essentially one people. We've always been one people. We are Nguni, we are so many things, but we are one people. And we've always been connected. Our stories have always been shared. Our experiences, our cultures, all of that it's been one thing. And that is the default position, believe it or not. So streamers are not really doing anything new when they try to bring together a narrative, let's say from Nigeria, and a narrative, let's say from South Africa. These stories and these interactions have been happening before they could even be recorded. They've been happening. It's about identifying the opportunity of saying, you know what, this occurrence needs to be given its space on screen. And that's what we should be doing. Not treating it like a new thing, because it's not really a new thing. It's never been a new thing. We've always been interacting. It's just that, our focus has been on other things, especially when it comes to the screen, and that has been, to a certain extent, responsible for the diminishing of the capacity of the industry. Sure. The reason why Europe is as strong as it is right now is because, Europe have a sense of, together.
Collective.
Yeah, they do.
They are a collective.
They are collective. The Asians to have that sense. The Latinos also have that sense. But, we are still suffering from the fragmentation of the colonial masters, to the point that when we try to do something that involves two African countries, they call it Pan-Africanism. But when my ancestors walked from the west, of Africa to the south of Africa, they didn't think they were living continents. As far as they were concerned, this is what
one trail.
We've been having it. That is their perception. But then, so it's all of these notions are not new. I suppose the thing that is new about them is the packaging, as in how do we package it and how do we present it and how do we make it monetizable? Yeah. How do we make it an industry? How do we capitalize on it to benefit everybody?
I think the one instance where it worked well was with Jacob's Cross.
Yeah. No, that worked very well. That worked very well, and it took some brave people to accept that this was a reality that we should basically just point our camera towards and then have a narrative generated from that. It didn't take anything apart from courage,
Yeah, something that's Nigeria has not suffered as much as South Africa. I mean, one thing South Africans have been complaining about is, Southern Africans, whenever there's iconic figures to be played, real strong men who've changed the narrative in history, we always get the Hollywood stars come and play, like Siretse Khama, in Khama's father,
yes.
The Nelson Mandela biopics and so on and so forth. But I feel Nigeria has such amazing stories, at least now up until recent, I'm seeing that there are kind of, depicting some of these stories, but, still narratives of the Biafra War, what happened there, the recent, kidnapping of, these schoolgirls that have been happening. So, but with Nigeria, at least I don't think so. It has been infiltrated to a point where you have another nation speaking on your behalf. Yeah, which is, I think Nigeria is still in a good space in that regard. But I definitely agree with you in terms of kind of amalgamating, ourselves to say, look, we are one unit and we should find a way of carrying the load together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I think South Africa's problem per se has been its proximity to the West. Yeah. That has always been a problem, and that is part of its identity, of course, because when you think about what consumption, entails in South Africa, most of what is consumed, are franchises from the US or from Europe. In fact, weirdly enough, the current cinema system that people know, Stekinuka and New Metro, they were actually American franchises, and they came in to basically just, present another market for American content, Hollywood movies, to find, more bums on seats so that they can generate revenue. They were never really locally, what do you call it, position companies.
Sorry to interject, but I can agree with you on that, because I have a friend who's working for one of the franchises, one of those two franchises. And, especially after COVID, when, sales were going down.
Yeah.
I mean, they were even selling. I think a portion of the Kineko has been bought or something of this sort. He was telling me inside information, but he said the biggest thing, while he's got friends who were part of the DTI, and their biggest complaint, the DTI and all these IDC, was saying we've never had a sit down with any of these franchises to say, how do we create content in-house?
Yeah, no.
And isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
You have this huge distribution platform,
And yet,
but you're not even investing in,
clearly. I mean, so there's an agenda there to keep it so that it serves Hollywood and Hollywood only, mostly. So that's why even when the South African films are being made and they go there, they suffer short periods of rotation, and they suffer also from given a limited number of screens, because space has to be made for Fast and the Furious, and James Bond, and all the other big movies that they need to be able to say, yes, they're sending all over the world to kind of take over.
And a huge lack of marketing as well.
Yeah, well, the marketing, the thing about these films come with their own marketing budgets, So the local films, of course, don't come with big marketing budgets. So that's also something that kind of discourages them from taking them on board. So we should, yes, have films funded by DTI and IDC, but those funds must also come with a marketing budget so that the films can be marketed very well. I mean, it's crazy, like McDonald's, KFC, and all of these other guys saw the market, they opened up, and that's why they enjoy the kind of revenues that they enjoy. But our cinemas, want to keep, notice this, every cinema in the country is in a mall. Only one is in the township, basically, which is Maponyo, but all the others are in malls, in suburbs.
But it still is a mall itself, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's in the township.
Yes.
But all the others are in malls and suburbs.
Yeah.
When you think about it, so you ask yourself, who's the target market?
You're so right.
If all the cinemas are in malls in suburbs.
But I guess it's also incumbent on us, who are part of this business, to say, okay, fine, then what other gaps can we fill?
Yeah, their loss is our opportunity.
Definitely.
And we should think about filling. Look, the truth of the matter is that developing the film industry of any country starts with cinema. It starts with mass audiences, mass viewings. Having 200, 300 people seated in one place, dark, and having magic happen on the screen. It used to happen in the old days, during apartheid, right? Bioscope culture and everything. But China, India, you name it, have all built their industries on mass viewings. That is how you build an industry, not on streaming. Streaming is like straight to video, or it's what straight video used to be. But in America as well, the population moving en masse to share an experience, to share in a culture or in a narrative, is how you build an industry, it's how you create the culture.
But don't you kind of feel like, the reality is, the era of cinema is kind of passing by.
Well, you will find one person who tells you that's not the case. And that person is me.
Okay.
No, I'm a firm believer in cinema. Cinema is not going to die. In fact, people started calling the death of cinema long time ago. When TV was made, they said, cinema is dead because now we have TVs at home. And then when the internet came, they said, cinema is dead because we have internet. The same thing is going to happen. Cinema depends, and cinema is part and parcel of humanity. It's the reason why people go to the soccer stadium to watch a soccer match as opposed to sit down at home. It's the reason why people go out to party. It's the reason why people actually club. Cinema is just another extension of socialization, and one that is even more meaningful because you learn from it as opposed to the others, Somebody's going to score a goal in a soccer match. You go to a club, you'll spend money, you'll drink, and you have a good time. But if you gather in front of a screen, you might just learn something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So my belief is that innate thing, that innate desire to share experiences, to share stories, right, is still being presented by the platform of cinemas. And as long as we as human beings have the need to rub shoulders with each other, cinema will never die.
But don't you feel like now we're in popcorn kind of microwave generation, people want quick things, and that's exactly what streaming offers the young generation.
True, but then look at what films like Oppenheimer have done. I mean, like 1 billion, Barbie. These are stories. Stories that connect generations and that connect cultures. I can go on and on and on. Fast and the Furious, all of these things they're
But I wish in that list of yours we would at least mention an indie film that wasn't produced by a studio or a local film that did phenomenally well in the recent times.
Yeah, well, so I suppose that's the end goal then, right? That we work towards getting films that are independent, small budget, but with meaningful stories also performing the same. But it used to happen in those days where films would be made for like $40,000. Blair Witch Project, for example, will make millions. Home Alone 2, or Home Alone that will be made for $1 million will make 500 million.
Sure.
Titanic, okay, let's not go there. but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So and the thing is that in Nigeria right now, as much as streaming is a big thing, the cinema system and the cinema culture is still very strong and pumping. Like there was a film just released a few months ago called The Tribe of Judah. It's already clicked ₦1 billion. First in history.
How much is that in rands?
It's about 6 million.
That's good.
Yeah. It's about 6 million is it 6 or 20? I'm not too sure. No, 20.
20
Yeah,
million.
it's 20
That's good
million.
for box office.
Yeah, it's 20 million. That's which so the potential is there. And mind you, Nigeria only has 50 screens in the entire country compared to SA that has 800 screens. So SA has 800 screens, but once again, they are mostly in the suburbs, targeting only people who live in the suburbs. And the people in the suburbs in the entire country are about 3 million. Do you know that?
Sure.
And then people in the townships are about 39 million, which is like 40 million. And yet the cinemas are not there. So it tells you the gap is just huge. Nigeria, thank God, luckily, it's very densely populated. Lagos alone has like close to 20 million people. So most of the cinemas in the country are in Lagos already. So if your film hits in Lagos, you know that you're going to actually have like a hit. So if you had more cinemas in Nigeria, right, you multiply that 50 by, let's say, 100, right, it will be, nobody will look at streaming. Nobody will look at streaming because the streaming model basically just keeps you busy, but it does not actually, it doesn't maximize the potential of the industry. That's just the thing. And the reason why, of course, Nigeria is full of this insecurities now, kidnappings, and economic issues. But there was a time, when people will flock to the cinemas and will make any filmmaker a millionaire overnight. India, like I said, is a fantastic example. India, it's a mass market cinema. China, the same thing. People pay the odd $5 or $2 and they flock into cinemas and they watch a blockbuster and the producers go smiling to the bank. That money filters to the actors because what are we saying here essentially? It's about building the capacity of an industry so that, people can become avenues for wealth creation. Stars, brands, merchandising, bringing together a whole ecosystem that actually begins with storytelling. And that is how in my capacity, or rather in my understanding, where we should be positioning ourselves towards, because otherwise, don't get me wrong, I love what is happening with streaming. I'm happy that we're in the streaming culture, but I do know also that, the streaming model doesn't depend on mass consumption per se. It depends on subscription, just regularly subscribing. That's it. And then if they can display to their shareholders, right, that there's regular subscriptions, then the share value of that streaming service stays robust, and some people make money every day, as opposed to the industry, right, which is storytellers and creatives making the money.
So basically, streaming is like the soapies of distribution. Oh, wait.
He said it. Marcus is the one who said it.
It just goes on and it's a subscription.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I basically understand what you're saying. Now, I remember when they built the Soweto Theatre in Soweto, right? And it was struggling for a long time in terms of audience. And, obviously I was very close to that kind of, the people who were, in the forefront of that. And the biggest problem was now, how do we change the culture from going to the club on the weekend to people going and sitting down and consuming stories? How do we take them back to where they come from?
Look, it's no easy task, and many people that will hear this will not agree with me. They will think I'm being fantastic.
Yeah.
They will think I'm being naive. They will think I'm not being realistic with what is on ground. And the truth of the matter is it was there, but it was truncated. So South Africa had a cinema culture. People in the townships used to actually flock to where there were screens and they would watch films. But because of the potential threat it presented to the government at that time, it was interrupted, it was aborted. It was stopped because it was a means of gathering, and people will now hear about the struggle, about, get updates. And the government knew that we can't have this happening. So the government interfered with the cinema system, and we are all reaping the woes of those decisions now, which is the reason why the culture seemed to have stopped. Because, you name it, state of emergency, lockdowns, curfews, bannings, shutting down of public gatherings. There was just no way a cinema culture could have thrived there. In fact, they even shut down the idea of having South African black movie stars. Ken Gampu was already on his way to becoming our James Bond, if you remember, with his films that showed black masculinity, kicking butt, taking out bad guys. And he was already like a star. People were like, oh, Ken. They shut him down. He had to leave the country. You know what I mean? He had to just try and find a future somewhere else. Because they knew that once he became that iconic character, he's an artist, right? That was a problem. Because that means you could spread the narrative that they didn't want. So it's about undoing that. It really is about undoing that. It's about starting with, of course, telling great stories that will actually get people to actually, choose to inconvenience themselves and flock to a place to gather and enjoy cinema with friends, family, and even enemies. You know what I mean? So it's not an easy task. But one thing I do know is that it starts with telling the right kind of stories and making sure those kind of stories can only be found in the cinemas, not just, in the streaming services platforms. Because somebody said that if you build it, they will come. If you know what I mean. It's
very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, with credits on dramas like Isibaya, Jacob's Cross, which we've just mentioned, House of Zwide, you've demonstrated versatility across different genres. Just tell me, how do you approach, directing different types of genres, and do you have a preference in any particular genre?
I love action. I love action. I love anything that helps me escape my present reality. And when it's done so well, it resonates with me so much more. I do like drama as well. Drama is accessible, it's close to me. So I'm drawn to those two. I love laughing. Comedy also is something that I love. I love making people laugh because I love sharing emotions. So, if I hear a joke and it makes me laugh, I want to share the joke with somebody else. But to try and answer your question, I think I won't call it versatility, I'll call it humanity. Because I try to find myself in every story that I tell. I try to find a connection between the characters, that I see on the script page. What is it about this guy that makes him like me or makes her like me? So I try to wear their shoes. And that takes, of course, somebody, that takes me being open to engaging with people as well as the actors who are playing those parts, to find the shared humanity, the commonality. And the moment I'm able to do that, right, then I'm able to say, okay, I can tell this story from a position of truth. I always believe that as a filmmaker, you can't tell a story that you don't understand. That's number one. You can't tell a story you're not familiar with. You can't. I mean, telling a story is like writing a journal, if you know what I mean, and the journal is personal. So if you're not honest with what you write in the journal, you know what I mean. People can spot BS from a mile away.
True.
Yes. So that's what I try to do. I try to basically walk in the shoes of the characters and try to find some understanding And that helps me kind of like navigate how to best position the story for the benefit of the audience. Because if I can't feel the character, right, then it's stupid for me to expect the audience to feel it.
That's powerful, man. But I mean, in this one instance, you kind of broke away from that and you created a documentary film.
Ooh.
The Burning Man. Now, this received critical acclaim, won multiple awards. Could you please just share your experience on this project and how it differed from directing scripted content?
The pictures were in every newspaper in the country and around the world. News reports said a mob had burnt the man alive.
So it's funnily enough, The Burning Man is what I think changed my trajectory of storytelling. You know, it was the documentary project that taught me the biggest lesson of my life about what it means to be a director or a storyteller, weirdly enough. And the credit for that should go to, you know, Angus Gibson and Desiree McGrath, who were the producers and at that time, you know, my bosses. And what had happened, you know, just a little bit of background, was this was 2008, and there were xenophobic riots in Johannesburg and across the entire country. And this Mozambican man by the name of Ernesto Nyamwave, you know, had been set alight and burnt to death in the East Rand in a township called Ramaphosa, weirdly enough. Why did I just say that?
Oh, well.
Anyway, so and his picture was all over the papers. You know, people saw it all over the world. BBC, CNN, and showed this image of this man being set alight, and there was a Mozambican producer who had asked the South African counterparts, "What are you doing about this? What are you saying? You know, because we can't have this. This is not us." So this group came together to say, "Okay, we're going to try and make some films to capture some of these stories, you know, to really say something about this incident or this really dark part of our past." And I was approached to do the one on The Burning Man by Desiree, my producer. And I was nervous as hell, you know, and I'm not too sure why she chose me. Maybe she thought, okay, you're a foreigner too, you should be able to relate, you know. So I'm like, okay, maybe. Then I began my research, you know, trying to speak to the people who reported the story, for example, you know, tried to find people who knew him, and then it was a very extensive journey. And one that was very, very, very hard. I have to admit, it was very, very difficult telling that story for so many reasons, because it was not a story that was uplifting. I mean, it was about a man who had been killed, a man who was a father, you know, he was a brother, he was a husband, you know, and it wasn't hard for me to relate, but then that relating was also difficult in itself, because it's not where you want to go to as a human being because of how traumatic the situation was. So that was the beginning of it. And by the time, you know, I had filmed, I was doing my own sound, I was my own cameraman. Sure. You know, I basically wrote the script. And of course, I got help and input from Desiree and Angus. But putting everything together, you know, was quite tasking and quite overwhelming. And by the time I put together the first cut, right, I discovered that I had done something. I had removed myself from the story completely when I did the very first cut. And I still remember it clearly. It was a conscious choice that I made because I didn't want to be in that story. It was just too dark. So I wanted to give like an objective point of view of the story whereby I wasn't involved, where I didn't have a take on what was happening. And when Desiree saw it, she was like, nah, that's not going to work, because now you are just SABC.
It's true. It's
now you're just being a journalist. You know, you've got no skin in the game. You know, go and put yourself in it. Because I was already in it, because I'd taken those parts out. So, of course, now I went back and then I recut it and I put, you know, I said how I felt, basically, you know, about the whole thing. And I remember dropping the DVD off for the first recut at my producer's house. And she wasn't at home, but her husband was at home at that time. So he saw the DVD and then he watched it. The next day he came to the office looking for me because he had been crying the whole night after he watched it. And he was like, he had never seen anything like it before. And he just came to tell me that my life is about to change.
Wow.
Those are his exact words. And And then next thing, the documentary was going around, went to DIF, went to Germany, went to the Berlin Film Festival, it was just going around. And I mean, there was even city of Johannesburg, in Rudaport had an indaba where, they call all the public servants together, and then they have this kind of colloquium, whatever. And they basically showed the same film. And they invited me to come and just present the film as well. So it was just all over the place, And the biggest lesson there was, okay, it's not about, the fame and the fanfare and the popularity. It was not about that. It's now me understanding the power of being personal when you tell a story that all of a sudden just opened up to me that, okay, this is really what it's all about. People want to hear you. Not me necessarily, but people want to hear you, your story. They want to know you, Marcus. They want to know what makes you tick. They want to know your fears, your flaws. They want to know, what itches you want to scratch in your life because you are authentic and you are true. And seeing you, reveal yourself, empowers them to do the same, And that is what basically, that was the approach that I began basically applying even when it came to fiction narrative storytelling.
Now, just to touch on that, I mean, South Africa now is very much getting into the space of adaptations of books and of stories and so on and so forth. Do you think the same applies, especially to an adaptation, let's say, of a novel? Or you still have to put in your own voice, instead of just transcribing, one medium to the next.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it has to be a personal voice, because a personal voice, like I said, it's authentic, it's tangible. When a personal voice is a true voice. It's a voice that's already existing. It already has scars. It already has flaws. It already has trauma. It already has, it has the organic history, of character that you're not creating from scratch, And when you do that, people feel the weight of it, and they know that this is not something that it's not marshmallow, it's substantial. They can feel it, and it's been how, for example, Bomb approaches storytelling. Everything is rooted in a personal point of view and a perspective of truth, because that is authentic. It doesn't mean that is the only truth. You can have multiple truths, which is okay, but at least you're experiencing one truth of a particular thing or one side of it, and that will make you go think. That would make
and that truth is focused and intentional.
It's focused and
it's not trying to be everywhere.
No, it can't be. It's not possible. You can only have. That's why the individual's identity is unique. There is nobody like.
I'm basically asking this because I've had a personal experience where we got rights to work on a biography, of this particular person who's had like an extensive life, and it runs over decades, like 3-4 decades in the South African perspective. And the writer that we got, with the drafts that we had, it's like, this script is going everywhere. Like it's like, it's touching every decade. And at the end, you're like, wow, it was one long, like, what do you call these things? You get at the obituary or something,
Yes, exactly.
He went here and then he did this and then he did that.
Yeah.
And there's no one perspective.
So I mean, I did a course a while back when we were shooting Shaka Ilembe, and it taught me something. It's called project narrative, and it teaches you about storytelling. And what it says is that there is no such thing as a true story. So if I'm telling a story, so even the documentary The Burning Man, as much as it was a documentary about a man who existed, right? It was still my perspective, and my perspective is not authentic in the sense of the word. It doesn't represent the absolute truth of it. It's one-sided, It just simply opens up the possibility of other sides to the story, which is what actually we use in storytelling, because we have to hook in the audience. And you can't hook them with many things. All you need is just one hook. So even the project you just gave, for example, is whoever was doing the adaptation needed to adapt it from his point of view. So it meant that aspects of that character's story that appealed to his reality and his experience should have been how he tackled the adaptation, and not from an objective point of view, because it doesn't work.
And then you got to jump on another very exciting, co-production, 10 Days in Sun City. I remember it like it was yesterday. People were interested because you brought, Nigerian talent, mixed it up with South African talent.
American international passport be this.
And the whole aim of it was to promote tourist destinations, right? So I'm sure there were some unique challenges, in terms of directing the film and so on and so forth, and trying to, kind of work out a good balancing act between entertainment and promotional content. And funny enough, this past week I was having, obviously in a meeting where we've been pitching work and so on and so forth, and so this company was like, okay, well, this is a model that we can kind of explore, which is basically bringing on brands to be a part of the actual development process and working that out. And as much as, right now we're always constantly worrying, where am I going to get the money? But once you bring on, a brand or someone with like a promotional marketing branding interest, it does kind of shift,
Yeah.
How did you work that out?
Well, look, I was lucky that the lead for 10 Days in Sun City was A.Y. Makun. A.Y. Makun, for those who do not know, is literally the biggest comedian on the continent. He's the biggest comedian on the continent. Some say he's the biggest movie star on the continent. He is so big. I mean, he's got close to like 40 million followers on Instagram. That's how huge he is. So, and he's an artist. He really is an artist. He's like one of the funniest guys you'll ever come across in real life. So that made it easy. And when we had never worked before, somebody recommended me to him. And when we began talking, I was going to let him do his thing, but I was going to try and find the aesthetics of what made South Africa, or Sun City as it were, a tourist destination. Fortunately for me, I'd never been there too at that time. That was my first time. So when I got there for the first time, I was also a tourist. I'm like, oh my God. So I was literally, overwhelmed by what I was seeing, and I wanted to replicate that same experience for the benefit of the audience as well. So that was my approach too. So even the way I selected the kind of camera we use and the way the camera should move, it was the first film I did without a tripod ever. Told the DOP, we're not going to have this camera sitting on any tripod. This place is so dynamic. There's so much to see. It's like a journey. So the camera is going to be on the handheld rig, on the Steadicam rig from beginning to end, and we've got 10 days to do it. Next thing I know, AY is calling the film 10 Days in Sun City as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's how the name came about.
Okay.
And it was such a blessed experience because, Southern Sun basically shut down Sun City for us for that duration of the shoot. Places where you couldn't experience shutdowns were shut down completely.
But tell me, did they come on as partners in the film in terms of that they put in rands and cents?
So basically the location was handed over completely
free.
for free. So the location was already something that they had. So the location was just ours to do as we wished. So there was no charge for the location pretty much. AY just had to come with the budget for the crew and the cast, but the component from South Africa was that Southern Sun would foot the bill for the location completely and the accommodation of the cast and the crew. And that's how that worked out. And I think Brand SA was also involved in it. And so basically that's why the coming together was such a fabulous thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
But on the ground, did it relate in terms of like how did the South African market receive it? And
I don't think it was. But the primary target audience was, of course, West African market. Okay. So it wasn't really marketed in South Africa very well. It didn't. I think they wanted it to go to cinemas, but I'm like, if you're going to go to the cinemas, you have to do more work. It's not I don't think you can depend on your popularity as Africa's biggest, because in South Africa nobody knows you. We had the same problem with Jacob's Cross, in some way. That the Nigerian actors, the South Africans weren't really familiar with them.
That's true.
So that basically affected its popularity here. But in Nigeria, it did so well. It's like in the record books as being one of the best performing films in cinemas. already, when it came out.
But why do you think that's so? Do you think the Nigerian market is a bit more receptive to
I think
South African content?
I think there's been. I want to say that South African audiences are still discovering themselves to the point that they hold back in discovering others.
Oh yes.
Yes, I think that's the case, but I might be wrong. Maybe one way of discovering yourself is to discover others first. Maybe that's another way of looking at it. Because I think that's the resistance we had with Jacob's Cross, that it didn't do so well in South Africa, but in Nigeria, West Africa, Ghana, Kenya, and the diaspora, it was a huge hit. And I guess it's because South Africans were struggling with, okay, who am I? Yeah, and if I don't have that unpacked for me, why should I be interested in somebody else when I'm still dealing with my own identity issues?
Yeah, but I think also we have a big problem historically in South Africa because we are very, apartheid really closed our minds a lot.
Yeah.
And we are a nation that does not travel, especially to other African countries.
Well, because there's no need to, because everything you want is here.
It's here.
But the cultural exchanges, the understanding that there's more to you than just that meets the eye, that's why I'm saying that it's stories that basically solve those problems. It's nothing else. It's not the government. It's not the church. It's not the schools. It's basically stories. Storytelling is what basically fixes these things. That inspires you to want to get up and basically cross the border, whether legally or illegally.
Make a plan. Yeah.
Make a plan.
But I'd say, just a quick one. As a director, you've worked on both South African films and international acquisitions for platforms like Amazon Prime and Netflix. How does your approach differ when working on local versus international projects?
I don't think I have a different approach. My approach is the same. Sometimes international projects just have bigger budgets. That's all. And what bigger budgets buy you is just more time. Yeah. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a better project. Just bear that in mind. Sometimes not having enough money is your best friend, because that means you are quite innovative and creative in how you solve problems and how you get to the point that you need to get to. So you work faster, you work quicker, and you work smarter to arrive at solutions that will have the same emotional impact on the audience. So I personally don't have a different way of working. It might just be, okay, you have more time for prep, you have more money for edits and stuff like that. But the groundwork that goes into pre-production and production for me is the same across the board.
Okay. Now, I know you're also involved in film training and mentoring of programs. That indicates a commitment to nurturing the next generation of filmmakers from you. What advice do you have to emerging directors, and what qualities do you believe are essential for success in this business?
I believe if you want to be successful as a filmmaker or a storyteller, you have to love stories. You have to love stories. You have to love stories more than you love food. You have to love stories more than you love sex. You have to love stories more than you love fast cars. Love stories, right? And then, and secondly, you need to be somebody who loves learning from others. You need to be a sponge that basically absorbs and sucks as much as you can from other people. Whether they are male, female, white, black, foreign, indigenous, rich, poor. You have to be somebody who embraces everybody and is willing to learn from everybody. Nobody is irrelevant as far as being able to learn and experience, from is concerned. Reading is 100% non-negotiable. You have to be a reader. You have to read like your life depends on it. Because if there's load shedding, of course you can't watch, but you can read. Reading is important. And I personally read a lot of non-fiction, which kind of helped me understand the world more. Because you can't really tell a story unless you have godlike knowledge of that world. Something that a wise man once said, and the only way you can have godlike knowledge of anything is if you study it. And then taste. Taste is something you must develop also. You kind of have to know what looks right on screen. What sounds right. So, what feels right, and that taste is acquired over time, through engaging with other people's work. Why is this person's work successful and this person's work is not? and then you develop the instinct for being able to recognize what is interesting, what is unique. You know, sometimes two things could be boring to get separate, but bring them together, you know, something changes. So it's about experimentation, also trying out things. You know, nowadays there's phones that you can shoot with, you can edit on your phone and on your laptop. And nowadays, geez, you have to go and wait and read. When you're reading in the library, it was books and volumes. You were using floppies, 3/4 inches to save 3 megabytes of research. You know, you had to just photocopy things. Today, you know, the world is basically at your fingertips. So if you're not voracious about wanting to know, you know, about filmmaking, right, then you're not really somebody who has been chosen, who has been called by the storytelling bug, as it were.
I love what you said in the beginning. You said, you know, you were one you were lucky to have been bitten, chosen by the bug, and not you chasing the bug. Because we've seen so many people come and go because they were chasing it and it just wasn't for them. But now with the rise of streaming platforms and digital distribution, how do you see the future of African cinema evolving? And what opportunities do you think these changes present for filmmakers on the continent?
Okay. So for a long time, filmmaking has been almost like the domain of the privileged, if you know what I mean. If you are fortunate enough to be somebody who has done good work and people know you, then it's easy for you to attract funding and to attract people, you know, who want to work with you, you know. But then if you're not one of those, how shall I say, entities, you know, what do you do? You know, how do you access funding? You know, how do you get your work out there? So the streaming platforms have come in to really help with that. That if you have an innovative story and you have an innovative idea, right, and you are able to get your foot through the door, right, chances are you might actually get your work supported with enough money to get it made. You know, I know people who have never produced in their lives, never directed, you know, never thought they would ever actually even find themselves directing like a major TV series. But because of the streaming platforms, you know, that have created more opportunities, they now have the chance to show us what they have. And what the streaming platform also does is, you know, it allows for more people to enter into the industry space, you know, to more or less practice, for lack of a better word. The issue, of course, is that, you know, the people who are the gatekeepers, you know, will always want to vet your work to a particular standard. And that is a problem. So my take has always been to do your homework very well. Imagine that every project that you're working on, you know, its failure is equivalent to the failure of your life. That way you'll be desperate enough to get it done. If somebody tells you you're not doing this thing correctly, maybe you go back and change it, you won't feel like your ego has been snubbed. You'll go back and make the correction and come back because you want to get the film made. So the streamers are a good thing in the sense that they are encouraging the proliferation of practice, which is what filmmakers need. You know, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm a filmmaker and I make one film in 5 years. But imagine if you could make one film every year.
Oh man, what a dream.
You know, exactly.
What a dream.
You know, so that's what they bring to the table, you know, that people can practice. You know, they say about practice, it makes perfect. You know, so you make one, it works, make one, it doesn't work, you learn from it, make another one. You know, one thing about filmmaking is that this is a space that you don't shoot your wounded. If you make a bad film, it doesn't mean that you should never be given another film again. You know, say, okay, God, you've earned your stripes, let's see how you can move past the last failure and make it again. So the streaming platforms bring that. You know, if they're open-minded enough to continue to invest in experimentation, in people trying out new things, then all that will happen as the years go by is that the space will grow and people will become better and better and better.
And it's funny because that's the conversation we've been having on the show. In terms of, you know, you find your Ava DuVernay's, you know, we assume they started and they did well with the Selmas, but in fact, they had like, you know, 2-3 films before, which totally were terrible.
Exactly.
And they were given that opportunity. Yep. So African filmmakers need to have that opportunity to make those mistakes.
Absolutely.
True. And now looking back at your career as a director, right? I mean, what are some of the most valuable lessons you've learned, and what are your aspirations for the future in your filmmaking journey?
I think one of the most valuable lessons I've learned, I've already kind of alluded to, is the personal take on every story. That you have to. Martin Scorsese once said that the most personal is the most creative, and he's right. A story that resonates with people is a story that comes from a personal space, and that for me has been the biggest lesson. To try and put more and more of myself, into the stories that I work on, because that is my take, my signature, my point of view, my lens, as it were, on the issue. And if I'm a wholesome human being, in the sense that I have a balanced way of looking at the world, then my take will resonate with many people. If not, it will reveal itself for what it is, and maybe I should be doing something else with my life instead of being a storyteller. So that has been the most valuable lesson. And for the future, I'd like to see more filmmakers come up and challenge the space, with their approach and also with their scripts and their stories. I'm somebody who's always keen on, listening to people who have fresh ideas and crazy concepts. And every time I hear them, I go, oh my God, wow, I would love to be able to retire. And my retirement will just be sitting down and watching all of these stories that, blow my mind. And then I look for maybe an old folks' home to go and tell them, guys, you should see this story. You should watch this film, from this young crazy guy, about X, Y, and Z. Because and that is the future. Nothing frustrates me more than seeing somebody who's a creative person, an artist, with several forms of self-expression, not being able to express that. It must be the most frustrating feeling of not being, to have so much inside you that you can't articulate and nobody wants to hear it, or you can't put it out in a way that people can engage with it. So I would love to be able to be in a space where every creative person who has something to say in a meaningful way has that opportunity to say it, and to be able to live off that craft and that expression, to be able to provide for their families, to be able to earn a living from their art, because that art is a gift. It's a gift, and gifts are supposed to make ways for you. They're not supposed to burden you to the point of crippling you. To kind of be involved in an environment or in a landscape whereby creative people, filmmakers, especially, from the African continent, have an opportunity to be able to manifest their art and craft in a meaningful way that basically allows them to earn a living from it. I think that's what I'd like to see for myself, as being kind of like a custodian or a curator of several filmmakers, storytellers, directors, you name it, who all have different projects that they're working on and manifesting those projects either as films or TV series, for the benefit of the audience and also for the benefit of their bank accounts, because you have to make a living in one way or the other. True. So that for me is my vision for the future. That's what I'd like to see myself being involved in the future.
Oh, sounds very exciting. So now we're in a different segment of our show, being game time. So game time. Yes, sir. So we'll be playing a game called Fill in the Blanks.
Fill in the blank.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
So basically, I give you an incomplete statement, and you complete it however way you want. Feel free. Okay? Right. We just want to see how your creative mind actually works. Oh, so there's no right or wrong answers. The most challenging aspect of filmmaking for me is?
The most challenging aspect of filmmaking for me is knowing how to end.
How to end?
Yes.
How to end the work, the film.
How to end the film. The toughest parts of any story.
Yeah. Finding how we are addicted to happy endings, or we want to teach people things. Did you watch the film Leave the World Behind?
Yes.
With Julia Roberts. People were so disappointed with the ending. What did you think of it?
I liked it. I did like it. I mean, I wasn't bored. I was intrigued and interested. Yeah, I think I liked it. I did.
Yeah, just leave him with a bit of a question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, because in reality, sometimes stories don't really end, right?
Well, no story really ends.
Yeah.
You know, you just stop watching.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, we run out of money, one of the two. But no story ever ends.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Okay. My ultimate dream collaboration would be with
James Bond. I think so. I don't know why. I think James Bond began my journey because one of those VHS tapes that my father used to bring was actually a James Bond movie.
Which James Bond was it?
The Man with the Golden Gun.
Okay, wasn't that done by
That was Roger Moore.
Roger Moore?
Yeah, that was Roger Moore. And that was the very first film I think I saw on tape. And ever since then, I've been like, wouldn't it be great to actually have an African be involved with making a Bond film?
Yeah, I remember there was a time where conversations were around Idris Elba becoming our new James Bond, but it seems like that won't work.
Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
If we can't take their own, we'll make our own.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So when I'm seeking inspiration, I often turn to.
When I'm seeking inspiration, I turn to comic books. Yeah.
Interesting.
I turn to comic books.
You're much of a reader, hey?
Yeah.
Interesting.
If the quicker I can read it, the better.
And comics are like quite quick, right? One line or picture, yeah. If I went in the film industry, I'd probably be
A traffic cop.
Why a traffic cop?
Because I'll still be directing something.
I thought you'd be talking about the cool drink money. I'm like, this man is a capitalist. Okay. I actually thought you'd be talking about being an engineer.
Nah,
Okay.
no way. Maths would make me go to the toilet. I'm scared of maths.
Okay, one film that significantly impacted my approach to storytelling is
Goodfellas.
Goodfellas. Mafia film.
No, not really. It's about acceptance.
How?
That's what actually the film is about. It's about being an outsider and seeking acceptance. That's what the film is actually really about. The mafia part is just wallpaper, but it's really about somebody who didn't belong and needed to belong. I was willing to do anything to belong.
Is this the one? This is the one directed by
Skwizas.
Skwizas,
yeah, willing to sacrifice his soul to belong to something that was utterly destructive. Yeah, I don't know why that spoke to me a lot. Just needed to belong. It's such a big thing for me.
It's powerful, man. Yeah, it's powerful. The most rewarding part of mentoring emerging filmmakers is
when they do better films than you.
It makes you feel.
Yeah, like Prime, eh? Like when I look at Prime, I'm like, damn it, man.
Yeah.
How did the Bisso pull that off? That should be my name on the directing credits there. He from one of my young people that I mentored. I had a film premiered and came out on Netflix. It's such a fabulous film.
Part of the Netflix NFVF slate.
Yeah,
it's wonderful, man. Yeah, really good project.
Yeah.
When crafting a character, I prioritize. I think I prioritize fear. I prioritize what they fear the most because most of the choices they will have to make will either be influenced by what they fear or what they hope. But fear is almost more dramatic because then you can easily work your way around to what they hope for. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Interesting. Because, I mean, most an interesting lead character has to be on the edge, right? And that edge is usually created by that fear.
Yeah. Because we all have fear.
We all have feelings.
Yeah.
Okay. My favorite filmmaking memory involves.
So it's interesting. It was Zone 14. Not just. It was no. I've got so many good memories, but I think Zone 14. Something about Zone 14 stands out. I'll try and be quick about it. But yeah, I think I should just say that, right? I don't need to explain or give context.
Unless you want to.
No, and do you have time for context?
How long is your talk?
No, it's okay. No, okay.
No, you can give us some context. What had happened? I think it's interesting.
Okay, so it was a simple story, right? But it taught me a very big lesson. So there was a scene in which a major character had to die, and that character had to die because they were leaving the show. So they wanted the death scene of that character to be grand and epic, right? So the scene was directed by another director whom I will not mention, and what happened was that they fucked it up. Can I say that?
Yes, you can.
Okay. They messed it up.
We own the platform.
Yeah, they messed it up so badly that the client, which was SABC at that time, said nope, they want it reshot and redone. So then I was asked to go and reshoot it, just the sequence of the scene of that character's exit. And said, okay, good. So the script was there. I saw what happened. Oh, the person walks back home, enters their house, and then there's a gunman waiting with the gun to basically shoot their partner, but instead shoots them instead. You know? So that's how the character died. So they shot it that way, but for some weird reason, it didn't resonate. It didn't feel strong. It didn't feel good. It fell flat. So when it was time for me to reshoot it now, I went back. I'm like, okay, so where's the gun? They said, no, you're not going to get an armorer because the budget has been blown. So there's no armorer. You're not going to get a gun. You're going to get a plastic gun if you're lucky. I'm like, huh? Okay, so I didn't have an armorer. I said, okay, what about the blood squib? Because you want it to be dramatic if the person gets shot. They said, none of that, because that was used in the first attempt, and that first attempt flopped. So you're not getting any of that. All you have is just your actors and your cameras. Make it happen. So I'm like, God, how am I going to make this work? And so I thought about it. I'm like, okay, first things first. I looked at the script. I'm like, okay, it was a day scene. First things first, change it to night. So I changed it to night. And then I said, okay, what could we do? So wait a minute. We could have her walk into the house. Camera could just follow her into the house, right? And then instead of seeing what actually happens with her getting shot, we cut back to outside the house and then just have the lighting guys flash their light once or twice and run from the window, right? You see the flash, and then we add the sound effect of a gunshot. And that was it. And when we did it that way, it blew everybody away. Like, it was horrifying. People were like the tears that came out when the episode was viewed, and people were calling me. I'm like, but I didn't show you guys anything. I didn't say anything. The rest was in your mind. You made it up. You were the one who imagined how she was killed. I didn't show you anything. The rest was just your fears manifesting. So
less is more.
Less is more. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're introducing a new mini segment called "Put Them On."
Okay.
Essentially, it's all about putting on, highlighting any upcoming filmmakers in whatever capacity, that we think we should check out. So since you're a film mentor and you mentor filmmakers, do you have anyone or two people that you think that we should look out for?
Yes. Okay. Watch out for Tabiso Christopher, guys.
Oh, yeah. We're having him soon.
He's coming strong. Watch out for Sitley there. Sitley is coming strong. And you'll soon have her on this seat very soon, as you may have noticed already.
Adza, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you.
Our conversation has been very, very informative, entertaining, enlightening, and I think all of us will have something to take home with us. Thank you for continuing to tell our African stories, for keeping the flag raised high, for being brave, fearless, and for being as creative and as a bigger brother figure that you've been in this industry. We really appreciate you, and we hope and pray that may you have many more years to manifest these stories that have been haunting you, and may you give us a sense of pride in our African narrative. Thank you.
No, thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Woo-hoo. Thank you.
We would like to thank Fortune Well, the Magic Lightbox Company, as well as the Dynamic Workspace for sponsoring this episode.